but maintaining that elongating vertical axis. Release the abdomen. Release those shoulder joints. Let the lower back and tailbone be part of that axis going down. And the background of the head is included in that axis getting longer upward. Again, releasing the abdomen. Maintaining that vertical axis, being true to that lengthening vertical line as you release the abdomen and the shoulders. And winding down a little bit, bring your feet back to approximately parallel shoulder width. Flowing out, remember the width, out, 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 infinitely to the sides, and then arms will drop and cross. And once you get into the rhythm and flow of this arm swing, remember the vertical axis, long and growing. The vertical axis continues to flow through you, up and down. Release the abdomen and breathe. Each time, let the arms flow out to the sides, wider and wider. Vertical axis gets longer and longer in both directions. Energetic arms, energy arms go out a little further, out to the horizons, touching the horizons. Let the energy go a little further each time, outward to the sides, through the arms, as the crown and the tailbone continue to extend in their respective directions. And release the abdomen. Flowing out to the sides, further and further. Continuous stream up through the back crown of the head and down through the tailbone. Soft belly, released shoulders. If you find the directions difficult, just pick one axis. The vertical axis, straight up, continuing, straight down, continuing through the tailbone. And once in a while, if you have some room in your attention span, out through the arms and hands, further and further out to the sides. Not really a sense that the arms are coming up. They're going out to the sides. Laterally out to the horizons. Drawn, pulled out to the horizons as that vertical axis just gets longer. And one of these times, you just let the arm just fall to your sides, hang out. Again, tracking the vertical axis up through the back crown, extending vertically, infinitely up, down through the tailbone, extending infinitely down, open sideways. Release. Good, gently rock out. Little wider than shoulder width, toes out, knees out. Check your alignment. You want to make sure you're not starting with lower back tight and condensed. So dropping the tailbone, lengthening lower back, even if you have to physically push back a little bit. Same with the neck, even if you have to push back through the back of the neck, open it, lengthen it, straighten it. But more and more it becomes something that happens softer and softer with the intentional vectors flowing up, flowing down. The spine will start to deconcretize and unfreeze. Our bodies are quite dense and frozen. So over time, the body becomes softened and open. So our intention is enough to change the body. And that's a huge progression because now the body is being moved and changed, not through muscular action and forcing, which half of the muscles are resisting, as the other half are trying to do. Now the body is soft and open, so just having a clear intention, the body responds and changes. The body's now very plastic. It's a shapeshifter and free, almost like a something that's liquid or between solid and liquid, not as dense as solid, more towards liquid like a gel. And just moving your intention will elongate, open the spine. And it's going to do micro squats. So literally just maybe an inch or so, inch, 2 inches, a little bit of a drop, and do that by lengthening your spine. Of course, you want your knees to go over your feet, but just by lengthening your spine, you go into about an inch or 2, 3 inches maximum. So that means that perhaps you're lengthening the entire spine, but physically, lower spine, tailbone perhaps moves more than the upper spine, but both are extending. Come up using the ground, using the feet. And then drop into a micro squat, not by moving your body, but by simply opening and releasing your spine. A good way to approach it is somewhere around halfway down your spine, releases down and elongates while the head stays where it is. Very much like that Velcro imagery we use sometimes, where this is not going to move, but the lower spine hangs and releases, which of course is going to stretch the entire spine. But the basic sense is I want to go into a little tiny squat just by lengthening and releasing lower back, mid back, and press to come back up. Press the feet into the ground. So it's like a little free fall, slow motion free fall, complete release, and press into the ground to come back up. Now add the breath to that. So as you release and sink, breathe in and expand the belly and back towards the back. So breathing in expands everything. So breathing in will lengthen and straighten the lower back. So that'll do that drop for you. So breathing in, that will drop the tailbone, lengthen the lower back for you. Breathe out, press into the ground with your feet. We'll bring you up that inch or 2 back up. So breathing in, expanding, pushing the lower back out. Breathing out, releasing the lower back and coming back up. So you can let the tailbone, lower back release and curve a little bit again. And so it's a pumping action, a sacral pump. So I'm dropping the tailbone, releasing the tailbone, dropping the tailbone, releasing the tailbone. So breathing in, sinking, that breathing in, filling the torso, opens and lengthens the lower back and sends the tailbone down. Breathing out is letting that release, suppress it. Now to add to that a little further, have a sense that as you breathe in, or breathing in actually pulls you down. Breathing in sucks you down. Breathing in actually pulls the tailbone into the earth. Just like a suction or a bellows. When you open the bellows, it creates a suction, filling it with air. Opening it, suction, or an accordion, open the accordion is a suction. Breathing in sucks you down. Breathing out is pushing from the feet up and releasing you back up. So breathing in is pulling you down from the tailbone. Breathing out, press down into the ground to send you up. So connect that to the breath. So that you're moving only because of the breath. So you're not doing any movement that's not coming from the breath and your intention. So only move as much as you can connect it to the breath. Again, it might just be an inch or two, might be less. But try not to have any extra movement that's not coming from the intention and from the breath. And now changing it slightly, rather than having the tailbone lower back release and come back into that gentle curve, endeavor to have the tailbone continue to hang the whole time. So the lower back is virtually flat the entire time. So breathing in, again, is pulling the tailbone and the spine down and long and straight. Breathe out when you press up through the feet. Keep the tailbone, lower back, basically where it was. That will change the angle slightly of the body when you come up. You'll feel a different line of force up through your body if you keep the tailbone basically pointing down, hanging down. So now we're keeping the lower back long and stretched. And it doesn't come back into a flex. Try to release the muscular effort in the hips and even in the legs. Let the legs become empty and hollow tubes through which the breath and the energy moves. Notice any tensing or clenching if you can, and then just allow that to not be there. Let it open. Let the body open and release. And now going into more traditional Danyus, but again, start very, very small at first. Having that same intentional and breath dynamic. Breathing in, sucks the spine down. And again, just maybe a few more inches, but not a full squat yet. Breathe out, press the feet into the ground. Breathe in, it pulls the tailbone down into the earth. Breathe out, press the feet into the earth. Keep your elbows well in front of the body. And drifting down. Breathe. When you're ready, inch your feet in. And then back out. Serving tea. Remembering that infinite line through the spine. Things we've been talking about recently, basically continuousness. If you have a continuing flow through the vertical axis, a continuing lengthening and or continuing widthening, widening, that will tend to create a continuous movement. It'll be hard to stop the movement when you have continuous vectors flowing. Hang the tailbone, lengthen the line through the tailbone way deep into the earth. Line continues to grow up through the back crown of the head, continues indefinitely up and down. Pressing down the leg and into the foot to cause the hip turn and weight shift. Notice the back of the neck, lower back. Release the belly. Continuous. Moving into warding off, left and right. So holding the ball. Come back to the center, holding the ball. Warding off, left and right. Notice when the body goes into contraction and you're doing things muscularly. See if you can come back to hanging out, back to that vertical alignment. Press the foot into the ground to cause the movement. Release and hang the tailbone. So notice when things creep in. And then release and open. Extend out. Extending out with the mind, with the intention, not the body. So the elbow is dropped, pointing to the ground, shoulders down. And then just bringing in the emphasis of continuousness, complete continuity, no endpoints, no stops and starts. Hang out and flow. Hang out, lengthen, open, and flow. Let your mind freely flow outward. Release the abdomen. Okay. Bring your feet in. Any questions? Donning the brush knee position. Take a moment to work the alignment, maybe some of the things that we worked on tonight. And then with the idea and feeling of continuousness. So notice any pauses, any little tiny little breaks. Any tiny little breaks. Even if you use a balance step, that does not mean that the system stops. Even using a balance step, things are still turning, flowing, moving. That continuity. Okay. So just a review in this position here, mechanical drive to ensure the continuity is the sinking or the sitting. That creates the step, sinking, sitting into that bar stool right behind the butt, sitting onto that bar stool, lifts the knee, causes a step. It's also what keeps the arms moving. So I'm not doing it here, so to speak. Sitting into that hip drives the elbows away. So that's where and how the continuousness occurs in this intermediary position for brush knee. So try a few of these and feel free to pause here, use a balance step and experiment with that dynamic and mechanic. Sitting to the back hip pushes the elbows away from each other. You do want to watch that when you do that. If you notice, when I sit into this hip, driving the arms apart, what could happen, a couple of things will tend to happen. One is maybe a rotation up like this, the elbows flare out, or simply the raising of the shoulders. So when you send those elbows away from each other because of the sit, see if you can notice if the shoulders rise. They do that. The shoulders rise, or there's a rotation, the flaring of the elbows. So you want to try to keep that shoulder plane down. So as the arms go away from each other because of the sit, the shoulders do not come up. So only let your arms and your elbows move as far as you can where your shoulders are not pushed up. So if I notice that if I get this far and I go further, my shoulders are tending to pull up, then I don't want to go quite that far. I don't want to keep sending the elbows apart and then at the cost of having my elbows rotate, flare out, or my elbows rise. So I don't want to lose the structure and the shape. So only let the arms and the elbows move and drift away from each other as far as you can while keeping shoulders down, elbows pointing towards the ground, keeping that basic structure. If you're feeling tightness, tautness, and things start to rise up, things like that, it's because you've reached the limit of your openness, flexibility, softness in the body. So it'll take time and practice to elongate the muscles and tendons and open the joints. So stay within the good shape, but have the intention for the elbows to drift apart because of the sit. Doesn't matter how much your arms and elbows actually move. It's an intentional direction, an intentional setup between the sitting of that hip, and that drives, sitting of the hip drives the elbows apart. So even if it's just a tiny, tiny movement, but you have that intention flowing in that direction. And then like continuous molasses on a very, very warm day flowing down the hill, it'd be very, very, very difficult to stop this flow. Sitting into that back hip, sitting onto that bar stool, keeps the arms flowing in their respective directions. From the brushing hand position, rocking back, rotating the hip, and therefore the shoulder and arm. Advancing into that leg, again, drives those arms, drives those elbows away from each other. And they just continue to be driven away from each other as they sit. So when you shift your weight into that front leg, that drives the arms and elbows away from each other. And they just continue to be driven away from each other as you sit. Shifting into that front leg, splays the arms apart, and they continue to be expanding apart as you sink and step. Hang from the string. Vertical axis is long and continuing. Breathe into the soft abdomen. So the arms continue to be, if I'm at this position here where I'm sinking and stepping, arms continue, elbows continue to flow away from each other, And they're forced or dragged or pulled into the new direction once I'm turning the hip. Once I release down to shift the weight and turn the hip, then the arms are dragged into that new direction. And therefore there's no segment, there's no stop and go. So the arms are driven away from each other continuously as I sink and step. And then because I'm now turning the hip, it drags the arms into a new vector. So there's no chance for them to stop. Same here when I come fully forward and I rock back and let that move through your arms. So your arms are continually being pulled and driven. So they never get a chance to stop at any point. So as I come fully forward, rocking back and opening is rotating through both of my arms. So I'm fully forward here and square, rocking back and opening. That's a rotation. That sends a spiral through both arms. So here, then I rock back and open, spiraling through both arms. Continuousness. Sink, sit, expand. Continues to expand as you step, and then your hip turn drags the arms in that new direction. Rocking back, eventually the turning hip moves the arms. Flowing forward, shifting the weight, drives the arms apart, and they continue to be driven apart as you step.
So could you just speak a little bit, Brad, about this comment of like the spiraling movement? Like I can compute the sort of like coming into, you know, that you're shifting your arms so that one is up and one is down to set up the next. But sort of the sense of where that issues from or how that translates through the body, I don't think I get it.
From here, rocking back, is that where you mean?
Yeah, you were just sort of covering that rocking back, you know, sort of generates the spiral that starts the new shape of the arms into the next part.
Yeah. So if we approach that stochastically, so if we were to freeze frame here, of course, hips are square. As I rock back and open, that's a turn, a rotational energy. And let that, the first thing I want to say is, let that just work through your arms naturally before I get too instructive on it. So if we approach this as coming here, forward, squaring, rocking back and opening, which is basically a circularity. If your arms are continuing to flow, say softly flow this way, flowing, let's just try this for a few moments where keeping your arms soft and flowing, again, almost like they're liquid, not actually solid, somewhere between a solid and a liquid. If your arms are flowing, and they continue to flow, they can't stop. So right now, the continual direction is in a sense down and forward. Continue, and they're going to keep going in that direction to the end of time if there was another force acting on them. So they're continuing to go in this direction. So what I'd like everybody to explore is having that sense that the arms, whatever direction the arms are going in, that's it for the end of time now. But then another force acts on them. So as you come to close to the completion of that brush knee, arms will continue, continue, continue. Let them continue. But then do your rock back and open the hips to the corner. And see what happens to the arms. So if the arms are very, 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 very soft and they're flowing, and you come to fully square, now it's time to release down that leg, roll back and turn the hips to the corner. If your arms are soft, soft noodles, very soft, almost water noodles, they're continuing in their respective directions, except that you rock back and turn the hips and see where that takes the arms or what happens to the arms. So this is a very interesting place, and it's a place that we have rarely talked about. Feel free to jump on that talking button if you have any experience or any comments. Arms are flowing, flowing, it'll continue in that direction, except your core rocks back and turns. Let your arms continue in the direction they're going in, but they're very, very, very soft. What happens to them as the core changes? Just explore that little section. They continue, the arms continue. They're very soft. Yeah, just working that little part over and over again. Remember, those arms are completely soft, and they'll continue flowing in that direction. Let them continue, but then your core rocks back and turns.
So that's quite interesting because the, you know, rather than conforming to the shape of the form, there's this like unending lengthening that happens that just gets turned to a different place because they're attached.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's mainly what I want people to experience right now. So because that's the continuousness, that's the freedom, the softness, and kind of the, like you say, not necessarily getting hung up on the form right this moment for that organic freeness. Just explore that a bit more, perhaps. See how soft and how much you can let the arms grow long, continuing in their direction. But then your core does something else. Your core goes into a different direction. The arms continue. It's like being in space. Like, you know, once you're drifting. I'm saying this because of Sandy's influence tonight. If you're in space, you will continue on. drifting, floating, drifting, unless another force acts on you. So let those arms drift through space, and they continue drifting through space, and or they continue getting long, 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 long. But then your hips roll back and turn, and just let your arms naturally continue to drift, but they can't drift in that same direction. And you'll find, well, first of all, on the most simple level, the arms are dragged into a new direction, just like we talked about in other positions. They're dragged into, these arms will continue drifting apart from each other. They'll continue. Elbows will continue drifting apart. They'll continue. Even though physically you might reach a limit and there might be some tension involved, energetically, you're sending your intention through those arms as you sit, and it'll continue. But as the hips rotate, drags the arms into a new direction. So same thing here, that arms will continue. You can think of them as drifting apart from each other here too. Not 180 degrees apart, but they're drifting away in their respective directions, and they will continue. They will continue naturally drifting those directions. But then my hips change. The arms are dragged. But not, so that's creating the continuousness. There's no segment, there's no endpoint. They're dragged into a new direction. But perhaps you can also discover or feel a rotational vector through those arms. It doesn't matter so much if you can or can't. The main thing is that this creates that theme of continuousness. Arms will continue. They just continue. I don't bring the arms into this brush knee position. I don't rotate that arm over. I don't put the arms in the brush knee position. They continue with what they're doing, but then I rock back, turn the hips, and let your arms be soft as if they were going to continue to flow in those directions. Any other comments or questions? So the main thing, especially right now, is we don't want to change the arms with the arms. As we know, the hips drive the arms, but what really creates the continuity and the sense of flow is this continual drift. This continual drift. But physically, mechanically, I rotate the hips and just see what happens then naturally through the arms, if the arms are staying soft and drifting. So through each part of the brush knee move, the arms will continue flowing in that direction in that part of the move. So have that sense, again, like floating in space, drifting in space. Here the arms will continue drifting away from each other in this perspective. But because of my hip turn, they're dragged into a new direction. And now they're going to continue in this direction on their own. They're just going to continue. Softly floating, softly drifting, infinitely drifting through space. But then I rock back and turn the hips and let those arms be as free and soft and drifting as they were. Each new direction the arms are brought into or dragged into they're going to continue in that direction infinitely, softly, inexorably, continuously. They will just continue drifting, 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 but then they're quote unquote dragged by the hip turn. And then they're going to continue to drift again, continually. Almost as if, as far as the arms are concerned, they're continuing to drift infinitely through space. They're not even really aware that they're going sometimes in different directions and changing directions. That doesn't really compute for them. The arms just have a sense that they're just drifting, flowing and drifting, flowing and drifting. And they're only made to go into a new vector. They don't even know that they're going into a new vector. It's made to happen because of that new force acting on them, a change in the hip direction. You might notice it adds an extra quality of softness to the arms and hands and an equalness of softness. It'll tend to make the arms and hands more passive, and I mean that in the best sense, not passive as in a deadness, but softer, gentler, softer with an openness, not a heaviness or a denseness, but a very a softness in the sense that there's almost no extra stuff. It takes the extra stuff out. You come into more of a pure experience and quality of softness. Takes out a lot of the extra stuff. So maybe just for another moment or two, letting those arms, they're going to continue to drift. Just like an asteroid in space. They're going to continue to drift. But your hips are the influence. Don't let the arms react. Let whatever happens to the arms happen to them. If you didn't know about the structure that we're supposed to be sending the elbows away from each other when we sit into the hips and make a step, if you didn't know about that, if you just had your arms totally soft and drifting, totally soft and drifting, what would happen when you drop your hips? If those arms are already completely soft, almost weightless, like being in space again, and you drop the hips, just drop the hips. What tends to happen to those arms? So let's actually try this just to finish off. Let's try this in what might be a very interesting maneuver for this theme that we're working on: softness, continuousness, chop with fist. That might be an interesting one to throw in here. Of course, that starts with the brush knee. So brush, that would be good because we can get into that field, get into that place and that space and that feeling. And just on your own, see if you can continue drifting those arms. You're going to continue drifting your arms, but then the weight and the hips change. You're not going to do anything with the arms. Let them float freely in space. You have maybe the vaguest idea of the shape it's supposed to be there, so that'll be enough to guide it enough. But it can be very loose. You don't have to worry about exactness as far as shape and structure. And then into the step, parry and punch. So continuousness, continuity, But right now, we're not even trying, we're not thinking about continuousness or continuity. We're not trying to be continuous. We're just letting those arms drift. And even when we change our weight and our hips, the arms just continue drifting. But as Cheryl said, they're connected to the body. So in some way, some form, somehow, they're affected upon. They're changed because they're connected to the body. So that's what we're exploring. And at the very, very least, that will create continuousness if there is a degree of some degree of softness. So from brush knee, those arms will continue into brush knee, continue, but the weight drifts back and you turn the hips. Let the arms continue to be free floating bodies through space. And then you step with the heel, shift the weight and turn the hips again. The arms are dragged, forced into some other direction. Doesn't matter what, but some other direction. Then you step and square the hips. And the arms are forced, dragged, compelled into another direction. Doesn't matter. You just have a vague idea of what that direction and shape is. So that'll probably get you into that next move. But that's not the important thing. It's experiencing how the arms, complete continuousness, and also how the arms are not doing it, and allowing the freedom for those arms just to drift, just to flow, just to flow. They will continue in their respective directions, but you change the weight and or the hip, and then whatever change they've made, they're going to continue in that direction, on infinitely. They will continue, but you change the hips again. And then once you set up that new change, the arms will continue, but you change the hips again. Arms will continue, they will continue until you turn the hips again. Any comments or questions?
I mean, this, you know, to pun on the Star Trek, I mean, it's way more spacious doing this.
Yes.
And to think about, you know, we've talked, you know, for me, it's been years of like, you know, your lower body moves but having just watched the movie Gravity not that long ago, like, you know, literally that you're going until something pulls you the other way. It's such a different quality of movement. So the continuousness, you know, is just so more available.
Good, nice. It is a completely different quality. It's a quality is really generated out of this approach. And it's a very pleasant thing. I was also going to say and in the best sense, kind of a spacey feeling, not ungrounded, but very spacey or spacious. So instead of a stationary wind down, why don't we finish with a mini set with this feeling in mind? So we'll just do one mini set and then we'll finish. That will be our wind down. And remember, when you change direction, which is mainly changing your hips, let the arms you can even fabricate it a little bit, manufacture that the arms want to continue drifting in the direction that they were. You can even kind of manufacture that a little bit. And so through the mini set, we'll have lots of different changes in the weight, and the hips and the arms will continue in their original direction, even if you let them go a little bit longer to kind of fabricate that. And that will create some experience as well. So let's do that. Hang out, lengthen the spine. Infinitely long up through the back crown of the head. Infinitely long through the tailbone, way into the earth and out the other side. And then infinite width. Hang out, breathe, send the mind forward to the beginning of commencement. The arms are compelled forward because of your intentional flow forward. And the arms are now drifting bodies in space. Arms are simply soft, very soft noodles drifting in their respective direction You can give the arms total permission to be lagging behind the next directional change. They'll continue, 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 continue. Let them continue even as you make your physical change and your hip change. Let them want to continue in the direction that they're going in. They'll continue going in that direction even after you make the hip change for another fraction of a second. Hang out and breathe. Do not worry one iota about bringing the arms and hands back. In fact, let them continue in the direction that they're going in. Let them continue in the direction they're going in. They will continue, continue, continue. Leave them be. Let the arms go. Let them be. Let them keep going. They'll probably be forced back, dragged back into a new direction. That'll happen totally naturally. You won't have to do it. Whatever new direction they're in, they're perfectly content to continue flowing, drifting in that direction. Maybe for almost a full second after you've changed the hips. And again, they continue for maybe a full second or so, even after you turn the hips. Even after you sit the hips and sink, they will continue doing what they're doing until they're forced or dragged into that new vector. They continue, maybe a full second or so after you turn the hips. Are they dragged into that new direction? Give yourself and the arms permission to lag a great deal, to be more continuous, more continuing. The arms just want to continue in the direction that they're in. They just want to continue because they're drifting. The force of momentum. They just want to continue. Allow that, give permission to yourself and the arms to continue, even past the point you've made the change. How much can you allow those arms to drift continually? How much permission can you give the arms to continue in their respective directions? Almost as if your job is to do the footwork and the hip turning. Your job isn't your arms. Your job is not moving the arms, not even really directing the arms. Your job is the footwork, weight shift, and hip turn. That's it. The arms are almost something separate. They're attached. They're just attachments. And you're not really concerned with those arms. You're just concerned with hip turning, footwork. Just let those arms go. Let them go, let them go. Give them another second or two or three. More permission to let them go, let them drift. Let them drift. Same with at the end of the set, if you're there. Changing of your intention sets the arms in a new direction. Changing of your intention or allowance changes the new vector. Arms will continue in that new direction. Even here at the end, the arms are continuing flowing down. Arms are continuing flowing down because that's their direction now. They're continuing flowing down, that's the direction. And the weight through the feet. Skeleton is nice and open. And gently rocking out. Thank you very much, everyone.